Amazing. Well, hello and welcome and good morning to everyone. I'm not sure I've ever been in a cinema this early in the morning, but I'm very, very happy to be here. And thank you for joining us for our session on creating impact with localized training partnerships. So we'll start with a bit of an introduction about our roles and what we do in our organisations, and then we'll kind of move on to doing a bit of a deep dive on how Dom and I have worked together on a partnership based in Berkshire, in the UK. So I'll kick off. So I sit in Amazon Studios' Economic Development Policy team. So it's a very long team title. So our team is basically responsible for making sure that we deliver kind of economic and community benefit where we have big regional investments. So my role is principally based in the UK, supporting our acquisition of Ray Film Studios, which happened last summer, which we're really excited about. And my role really is to develop partnerships locally and principally around training young people and mid-career professionals in the area to kind of to come onto our productions and stay with us long term. So it's a really varied, interesting role, and I think through that role we've developed some really meaningful, lasting partnerships, and one of those was Screen Berkshire.
Good morning everyone, so my name's Dominique, and I run a very small non-profit based in the southeast of England, in Berkshire, in a place called Slough. Slough is the most diverse borough, so the kind of very small town, but the most diverse town in the whole of the UK, outside of London. So we have a very kind of diverse workforce, people from all different backgrounds, people from all over the world that choose to live in our little town. And our little town is right next door to some major film studios, one of which Claire mentioned is Bray, and that's right on the edge of this very small town. And so my non-profit, Resource Productions, has been operating since 1999, so 26 years this year. I founded it as a young person in a local youth centre in the town of Slough, and I couldn't find work in film and TV. I was trying to get into television. I got a couple of jobs, but I didn't know enough people, I didn't have the connections, I didn't understand the ecosystem, I didn't know how to get work in film and TV, even though the studio was just there and had been there for probably 50, 60 years at that point. So my organisation, with our brilliant team of now 25, worked on getting local people in the town jobs in film and TV and into those studios. And so that's how we started to work with the community, with local schools, colleges, youth centres, faith groups, the local mosques, guaras, and trying to get people aware of the opportunities to get really good employment in those studios, but also to develop their own voice, to be able to tell their stories from their communities, from their background, from their viewpoint, and to get their creative ideas onto the screen, as well as working in the big blockbusters, you know, on Marvel Productions, on Amazon Productions, on Netflix Productions. So that's Resource Productions, 26 years this year, 25 in the team, very small non-profit. We get funding from lots of different organisations, and one of those is the British Film Institute, our sort of non-governmental organisation that works with the Department for Culture, Media and Sports to give out national lottery funds to support the projects that we run. And that's kind of one of the main funders that's relevant to us ending up working with Amazon, the BFI, and the British Film Institute. So that's Resource Productions and me. I'm the CEO. I'm also an independent producer. So I produced one feature film, and I think I'm doing another session later about film festivals and producing. But that's me. So I think we're going to do we're going to ask each other some questions, and then hopefully that will give you all time to think about questions you'd like to ask us as well. And we're going to show some slides just to explain a little bit more about our partnership. So my first question to Claire is, why are local partnerships so important to you? And how do you find the right people, the right organisations to partner with?
Great question. So, I mean, local partnerships, as you'll all know, are incredibly important. And they, for Amazon Studios in the UK and globally, they provide us with really specialist knowledge on the ground. So when we come into an area, we're very kind of new to an area, often geographically, and we won't know the challenges and objectives of organisations on the ground. So it's really important to us to find the right training providers sometimes it's kind of locations, sometimes it's sustainability experts. There may be a kind of range of different areas you might be focusing on, but finding that partner who has a specialist knowledge, who shares the same goals and objectives for us, and also is trying to solve the same problem as us. I think that they're the three kind of key areas that we would focus on. And then trying to identify those partners, it's a challenge. I think it's not always easy, but you start with looking at your existing network. So that's as simple as kind of going on LinkedIn, talking to national organisations, local governments, other specialists in that field, and then meeting, building rapport, having coffees, kind of building a personal relationship. And I think a lot of it is down to those kind of three areas I talked about before: shared objectives, shared goals, and trying to share a similar kind of problem, but also actually getting on with those people. So you need to find a partner or organisation that you feel like you can work with, right? Because often it can be challenging. You might be kind of trying to resolve lots of kind of problems early on before you can even get going and launch. So I think it's really important you have a shared kind of value in terms of the way that you work. So that's always a challenge. You might kind of get so far and realise, I don't think this is going to work right now, but we might kind of come back together at a later point on a different project. So I think the moon and stars have to align, and you have to find the right partner at the right time and trying to share the same problem. I think they're the kind of three kind of key areas for me. And then again, on identifying them, it's a range of different areas, but for us it was about going out on the ground, kind of getting coffees booked in and talking to existing partners in the area. I think they're the kind of key major kind of themes. But my next question to you is, how is Green Berkshire Partnership structured, and how is it funded, most importantly?
So we've been asked to share sort of the model, which comes from a very small region in England, in Berkshire, just outside London, just to the west of London, and Slough, that I talked about earlier, is at the centre of that. But it might be useful for you to sort of see a case study of how we've worked in that very small locality, which then hopefully could be shared into other regions and localities in a similar way with some of the lessons learned. Other side of the world, but hopefully useful as well. So you can see above, these are all the partners in the partnership that Claire and I have built with lots of other organisations. And so I'm just going to talk through all the different logos, because they're really important to understand how the partnership works. And again, this is something that could be applicable in this region. So firstly, we've got Green Berkshire is just a brand. It's a name, it's a logo, it brings us together, and it's a shared branding exercise. There isn't actually an organisation. It is a partnership called Green Berkshire. Then we have Resource Productions, I spoke about earlier, non-profit, that leads in terms of attracting funding, the community interest, the commitment to diversity, inclusion, access, skills. Our track record is leading all of the partners together, and we have financial and legal responsibility for the whole project. Then under that, we then have the BFI, the British Film Institute, the public funder that I mentioned, who puts in the key funding, which then attracts all of the other partners. We have the endorsement of the government effectively through that NGO and through that funding, and that then attracts and offers quality assurance to all the other partners. Those other partners then, the second one that came on board was the University of Reading, so it's the only university in the Berkshire area, in that locality, so it's quite straightforward. We didn't have to think which university to apply to. There is only one in our locality, so the University of Reading and the Film and TV department are a very core partner that work with us on research as well as working with their students and alumni. Then we have Shinfield Studios, which is actually part of the Shadowbox group. So Shadowbox is a US studio company. They build physical studios and house productions globally, and they opened their first UK studio in Berkshire, and that's called Shinfield Studios. So that physical studio is a partner that provides space, support and funding as well. Then the second line, we have Berkshire Film Office. It's effectively a mini film commission. For those of you that don't know what a film commission does, essentially it manages locations, inward productions coming into the area, finds supply chain solutions, from catering to kind of anything that is required by that production, especially locations. So we have all of the local councils and all of the locations that support. And then we have Amazon Ascend, which is a key part of the Amazon MGM Studios world, which Claire connected us to, and that's how the Amazon partnership came through. The focus for Amazon Ascend is on skills and training up people within film and TV and on production. So that's a really clear alignment with what we do. And then lastly, we have an independent British producer, Oscar winner of The King's Speech, Gareth Ellis Unwin, and his independent, very small production company, which has a global kind of reputation, and that's Bedlam. So you can see the diversity of the partnership, and every single one of those partners makes a really specific contribution. And that's something that hopefully those different touch points that I've gone through can be applicable globally. If you can find that set of partners, I think it's a really good starting point for anything like this programme. So I'm just going to flick through what we actually do as part of this partnership. So the key objectives are to upskill, reskill and connect a diverse range of people and talent and skills to fill the skills gaps that we see in film and TV in our region and across the UK. So here's the 4 strands on the screen that you can see we do that through. Essentially, Create and Credit, we help local people to create their own stories and to shoot short films, and then we get people jobs, paid jobs on those short films, so they have credits for IMDb and also credits to then evidence to the streamers like Amazon that they're competent. So making films and short films is essential. The second thing we do is train and develop, which is key. Lots of training, responsive training to the production's needs, and making sure that everybody understands, what the skills gaps are and responding by creating courses. Then we have recruit and retain. We have a lot of people that leave the industry. They may burn out or not be able to progress, so we need to support those people to retain them within the workforce, give them upskilling and transition people from other sectors as needed. Areas like carpentry, construction can easily transition, or production accounting, for example. And lastly, reflect and share. We really work with the university closely on this to share best practice. One of the reasons we're here today, to make sure that the lessons learned from all of these things are then shared, and academics support us to make sure we produce reports that give the evidence to show what works and what doesn't work. There's just a couple of other little slides. So we have done something called HOD training, head of department training. We actually have to get extra funds in to do programs like this. So again, Amazon supported us, the production supported us to respond to a bespoke need, to bring in extra funds to respond to a production's need for head of department training. So quite senior level training. And then more regularly we do trainee programs, which Amazon are really good at. They support those on a lot of productions, as to other kind of projects and productions. But essentially, we primarily focus on trainees because that's where there's a real need, and kind of it's easier to get them onto productions. So this is a cohort from the same production that we ran last summer. And a little case study up there of one of the young women that got a job on that production through traineeship, who's now still working in film and TV. So that just gives you a flavour of how Spring Berkshire is structured, and in the context of this discussion, what we're talking about and how it's relevant to yourselves. So that's about it. So then after that kind of overview, we talked a little bit earlier about the need for different partnerships. One of the main things that we need in order to get on with lots of different partners is also to understand the challenges. So I was going to ask Claire, looking at all of those different partners and all the partners that you work with everywhere, what challenges have you encountered, and what have been ways that you've overcome them or found learnings out of those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first challenge I would say, there's probably lots of people in the room that are thinking, oh wow, I'd love to do something like that. How on earth do I start to sell that into the organisation that I'm in? And I think that initially trying to sell in a project like this internally at Amazon, as you can imagine, it's a large company, you've got lots of different kind of competing stakeholders internally, limited budget to work with, so you're kind of trying to think, what's the unique selling point of this project? And I think that was the first hurdle, and that was the first challenge. And I think the really key thing that Dom talked about there is reporting, data, and solving a need that the production came to us with. So this wasn't an imagined partnership that we thought was, it's nice to have. This was actually the production saying, look, we're coming into Berkshire, we're going to Bray, we need a training provider that's local, we want to hire local talent, who's going to help us do that? And so thankfully we found Dom, and then this partnership with the other organisations then naturally evolved. And I think that's the really important thing, that was very important, that was very easy to sell in because it was a business need. All the kind of costs were really specifically accounted for, which I think really, really helps. The PR, was really, really important. So I think the partnership had proactively already thought about how we were going to profile our work together, who were the key audiences that we wanted to reach. For me, it would be government policymakers. For Dom, it would be, other kind of higher education organisations and other trainees. So I think thinking ahead about those obstacles was really key. I think once the partnership had got going, one of the key kind of, I wouldn't say challenge, but kind of unexpected kind of hurdles was we went in with a very, very specific, quite narrow brief about wanting to get mid-career professionals onto our productions. So not somebody who had 1 to 2 years experience. We wanted people who knew what they were doing, they'd got their kind of base work experience, and they were specialists. And actually Dom and the teams that we worked with, educators on, actually start broad and then dive in, see where you go, see who kind of applies, and then let's see where we go from there. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I think keeping your objectives broad at the beginning and not being too specific about the type of trainees that you want on your production, I think really floors.
Yeah, I think it's you're trying to do something on a production where you're bringing in new talent, but that could be at any age, any background, any point in a career. And I think the assumption was all the trainees, someone fresh out of college or school or uni, and they're kind of a little bit of an add-on and not taken as seriously necessarily. So that's a general sort of, in business anywhere, people maybe view new entrants in that way. But it was to try and say, well, actually, you can have someone who's got 10, 20 years experience, or we can work with your existing crew to give them additional skills. And that was the way in to then get some of the new entrants potentially. Because if you get that buy-in from those that are actually already on the production, that want training themselves, then that enables them to have the skills they need to then manage the new entrants, for example.
And I think specifically the training that we did was on, I think we commented Citadel, so that was the production Citadel. We had 22 trainees. And now we're looking at potentially getting somebody on the post-production side now kind of 6-7 months on. So there's a really interesting life cycle of how that's kind of worked. I think going on to kind of the partnership more specifically, what does working with a partner like Amazon specifically bring, would you say?
I think you can't underestimate the value that a global brand like Amazon brings to a very small non-profit or even a governmental organisation or non-governmental organisation. It gives that commercial value that you just can't, it doesn't matter how much public funding you've got, it doesn't matter how much goodwill or talent you've got. If you have a known brand, it attracts other funders, partners, investors. That has its challenges as well, because you then have to go, actually, we've got aligned values, because it can attract a lot more attention. So it can sort of have those challenges as well. But essentially, in terms of raising the profile of the work that we've been doing for 25 years, on our 25th anniversary, we launched this programme, and suddenly in the eyes of kind of UK policymakers, UK partners, film and TV, we suddenly went from being this community organisation in a kind of little town to being this kind of national leader. And Amazon and being associated with them and being able to work on those large-scale productions visibly was a really big part of that. So I think making sure that you know the value of both parties is really important.
Yeah, and I think from Amazon's point of view, just not being too precious. So understanding that actually, Disney might want to work with us as well, and being completely fine about it. We're ultimately there for the ecosystem of Berkshire and the surrounding counties. So I think not being too precious is also really important, and being genuine about your relationships with each of the partners, I think is really, really key.
I think it's over to me now to ask you.
Yeah.
So we talked a bit about why is Berkshire in England relevant to here and this region. So in terms of the lessons learned, what do you think that the lessons learned are that could be applied here? So there's lots of stuff we've done, but are there things that you think could be applied in this region?
Yeah, I think the really, really key thing is hiring local talent and being really kind of specific in terms of what a production and what the business need is, and trying to kind of work back from what the skills gap is. So what the skills gaps were in Berkshire, well, it may well be very different to here, or but there'll be different production from production to production. So I think being true to your North Star of working from a problem is really, really key. I think understanding the objectives and goals of each partner, again, that's something that's kind of applicable here and will be very different depending on the organisation that you're working with. And I think, again, just being really flexible and pragmatic about the way that you work and not being too targeted and specific in your brief early on is really key.
I think in terms of other things that might be useful to transfer across is just that idea of identifying what the skills gaps are in your locality and also what the potential is of your population. You have a diverse population here, you've got lots of different skills, you've got lots of different sort of cultural dynamics. So thinking about how you can specialise and utilise and build on those to make you unique globally as well. So that's a real massive advantage and something that we learn from a tiny little town here, and you've got an amazing kind of workforce here that you could draw upon. So hopefully that's transferable.
And I would also say think about the production you're working on. So previously we worked on Rings of Power, Citadel. They've all got a very different culture and different dynamics and different pressures, and they will be suited to different trainees. So I think you may know more about that. I may be able to expand, but I would say put people on placements that they're going to succeed on, and it's going to work for everybody, the production and the trainee. I think that's really important.
Yeah, making sure that the production that you place local people onto is prepared to understand what the needs of the local workforce are and to work with you on that, and that they're complementary to it and they're not going to contrast with what actually your workforce needs, because you'll set people up to fail if you put them onto a production where the culture is not appropriate for what their needs are just to work in. I think we've got one last thing, and then we've got I think about 10 minutes for questions, so we're just going to talk on one more topic and then we'll go out to you guys to ask anything you'd like to ask either of us. So we were just having a think about what the added value or the extra impact might be about working in partnership and what the sort of emerging added value is from working with partners rather than just going it alone and carrying on as Amazon or Resource Productions or any of the other partners you saw, what the added value might be.
Yeah, and I'd say on the Screen Berkshire model, I think it's very easy to often do kind of an Amazon or a Netflix or a Disney or BBC and then a training school. I think what's really valuable about this partnership is you've also got a university for the reporting element and the kind of deep dive understanding of data of the local area. You've got a studio space. I think having different partners all joining together gives you a really strong, solid foundation on which to build, and it gives you flexibility. So it may be that in 2 or 3 years' time you're looking at doing other types of kind of models and traineeships. It may be that you're working on more outreach, community engagement. So I think having multiple partners with different specialisms and different objectives and goals can be really powerful, and don't just stick to that 2-model stream and production and training school. I would say that they're the 2 learners from my side.
Yeah, definitely. I think the value of, albeit trying to wrangle 6 or 7 partners can be really hard and trying to get everyone aligned in the same vision. When it works, you definitely achieve much greater impact than any one of those organisations ever could alone. And there's a tendency for people to try and, reinvent the wheel and to go, well, we need to skip the skills programme, let's set up the skills school and make something from scratch. Actually, there's probably individuals or people or organisations that are already doing elements of that, and if you can harness that and invest in that, it's better than starting from scratch every single time. So getting people to share the ethos, share their learning, and investing in things that are already happening is a really great way to add value and increase impact quicker and more effectively. I think we've talked a lot now at you, so we've got just over 10 minutes on it. Questions? Loads, that's good.
Okay, let's do a roving mic.
Hello, thank you for the amazing panel discussion. My question is, I remember when I'm Egyptian, so I remember when I was a child, we had 2 cinemas, it's called Metro. And they exclusively screened Metro Golden Mayer productions. When Amazon made the acquisition for MGM Studios, I felt like the platform is like threatening cinema production because this dilemma or this argument is going forever, like platform or cinema, watch at home or watch on cinema. So I'm wondering about your intention about thriving this industry here. This is Mecca. UAE is Mecca. Because I'm Egyptian, a lot of my co-workers are from all over the world. So are you intending to invest in people like locals? They can tell the stories that they know, so the local audience can relate to. So because a lot of movies that they have very big budgets, we see all over the platforms and we cannot relate to, and they flop. Rotten Tomato, IMDb, they are like 4.5, 5.3. So are you intending to do this, like scout people, local talents, tell the stories? Because I have Amazon Prime and I don't see much of the stories that I can relate to, even shorts or web series or TV series or films from the region. Not that much. I don't know about programming policy, but maybe other platforms have this. So this is my question. Thank you so much.
Great question, thank you. I can't talk specifically to commissioning. Amazon is dedicated to hiring local talent, hiring diverse local talent, and ensuring that our crews and our content is reflective of the diversity of our customers. So I think that absolutely our objective is to hire locally, as we've talked about. I think that's the only way that you get truly reflective content and understand the objectives and goals and concerns of people on the ground. So I think, yeah, absolutely great question and absolutely right to answer.
And I think, also it's a kind of global issue that you highlighted there, not specific to any streamer, is the kind of arguable demise of cinemas. And if you do come to the film festival's presentation I'll do later, I talk a bit about, I predominantly work in the South Asian space from the UK, because it's exactly the same challenge, and you don't see those stories being told of the diaspora. And there's a massive market, and those people want to go to cinemas and they want to watch films. And I think, whether it's Disney, Netflix, Amazon, they're understanding that too, and they're looking at ways of reaching those markets. So I think it's a really exciting time for people all over this region, because I think that's where the market's going. Personally, I don't work for Amazon, but that's what I'm seeing as a filmmaker.
Hi, good morning, ladies. Big thank you for the session. As you said, exciting times. I also come from the film industry back in South Africa, hosting one of the family business back in the 60s, back in white silent motion pictures. A huge industry. It's also good to see that, as you mentioned today, it's all about partnerships. It's all about assisting and creating workshops and educating. I just want to make a bit of a comment to say that Amazon has done some great stuff. You guys have recently acquired a huge global franchise, which is the James Bond franchise. Well done to that. Looking forward to some exciting projects. And my question is, maybe you might share who is the new James Bond? Thank you.
Great question. Still don't know. I'll find out when you guys do. So we're very excited. Yeah. Sorry, I can't share more on that.
Sham from Dubai Media Council. First of all, thank you for the great session. My question would be, first, in Dubai we do adopt similar model where partnership is key. We have academia, we do have economy and tourism on our board, we do have culture, and as a matter of fact, in this room today we have Amazon, we do have Netflix, we do have Arabia Plus, Dubai Studios, all in the same room, and other producers as well from all around the globe. So this is a story that partnerships are key. My question is, how can we export our culture, our content, using those partnerships? And did you guys follow a specific model that helped?
So, in terms of, it's really, I think it's a bit sort of chicken and egg in terms of until you have the really strong voices and the content that you've created locally, then it's really difficult to tell those stories in other countries. But in terms of the workforce, it's a lot quicker to get the workforce specialist and skilled, and then to be able to export that workforce. You know, in the UK, we've seen that lots and lots of skilled craftspeople, technicians, heads of departments, cinematographers, producers, you know, from the UK are in global demand. And that's before people started making lots and lots of productions in the UK. So I think if you have those specialist skills that you nurture here through those partnerships with local content, with a local voice, then both the storytelling starts to increase awareness globally, but also the technicians, the craftspeople, the filmmakers get known globally. And it's down to it's a massive industry, but it's also limited by the heads of department, who are the leaders who represent your country, your objectives. So if you can get some of those globally known working on productions, which you do have already, but the more you get out there, the more they spread the word for you and build those partnerships in all of the other global territories. So I don't know if that helps, but definitely developing the workforce, getting the stories out there, and making sure that both the skills and the stories are known outside of this territory.
I'd also add, I mean, you can develop best-in-class trainee programs, right? When you can benchmark trainee programs here. That's something that can be developed and scaled, and then case studies, I think, are really key. So I think that would be another great way of kind of profiling cultural identity and specific kind of approaches to training that are unique to here.
Any other questions? Well, I think like 2 minutes left, so we've got time for one or more questions if anyone wants to ask anything.
Hi ladies, my name is Jordan. I'm a local producer here. I've been in the region for 10 years. I was actually the production manager of the first feature film called Code 46 with Michael Whittington. There was not many resources here. My question is there perhaps opportunity for talks with like the Film Commission for Ascend to maybe come and do a workshop here or something, so that it gives an opportunity to experience how they could grow in the region?
Great question, and there are talks ongoing, so absolutely, yeah, it's something that Amazon's kind of looking at lots of different kind of global projects. It's definitely something that we are talking about. It's really exciting.
That's great.
Hi, my name is Hamda. I'm here. Hamda from the Dubai Media Council. I just have a question. We meet with a lot of different big studios, and they mentioned there's a lot of skill gaps in the industry. From your experience, what's the biggest skill gap that you noticed in the industry? I know script writers is one of them, things like that, but I wanted your perspective.
I would say script writers is currently a massive gap. We've got an oversupply, in my experience, of script writers, directors. We need more producers, location managers, production departments, so those organisers, administrators, coordinators, all of those business affairs, admin skills, legal, financial, production accounting, all things that are directly transferable from a lot of great industries in this region. We have not enough people that want to take on those roles. A lot of people do want to do the writing and the directing. So a lot of business affairs, and then at the other end, the technical and craft, so particularly construction. So whether that's specialised carpentry, set building, also in terms of scenic painting and really specialised art skills. The art department requires lots and lots of people. And then conversely, we're now having more and more virtual production. So as that increases, we still need physical production and art department, but we also need people that are specialists on things like Unreal Engine and virtual production and the technologies that service the virtual production kind of studio model, which is slightly adjacent to, but is now going into a lot of the mainstream films. So technology and physical technical skills are also really, really important. So those are the key ones at the moment. I think, and independent producing is always a challenge to kind of support and nurture independent producers to generate those stories and those voices and commercial successes.
Thank you so much.
we've got time for one more, and then I think we're it.
Good morning. So I'm lucky from the Biomedia Council. You're saying that a lot of these careers are directly transferable, for example, like accounting and carpentry. How can we let the people know that? Because I know that there is a career path and there is money in this sector. How can we, let them know and acquire these people?
Well, I mean, we have the same challenge in the UK, and we're still addressing it. I think the programme that we've described, Screen Berkshire, is part of a national, across the regions and nations of the UK, where there's 7 different skills clusters that are all trying to do exactly that, to raise awareness. So we haven't got the solution yet, but some of the things that we talked about today is how we're reaching out to universities to make sure that the curriculum in the universities is reflective of those skills gaps, and that when people, for example, now at the University of Reading, when they go on a master's as maybe a mature student to do accounting, there is now a production accounting module on the masters in accounting at the University of Reading. So sometimes it's those really simple things that can really make people aware of that industry within an existing sector. But for those that obviously aren't in education and are out in the workplace, then it is looking at things like working with partners to see if there are awareness raising workshops or particular campaigns that you can run. In the UK, we have an amazing website called Creative Careers where it demonstrates all of the different job roles and all of the skills required. And there's a whole programme where there's outreach and engagement to raise awareness more generally at careers fairs and things like that. So yeah, it's really something that everyone globally is still trying to understand, and it also has to be quite flexible and responsive, but definitely working with educational institutions to make sure that they are increasing awareness across. If you're doing carpentry, that's a challenge we found in the UK, trying to get carpentry teachers to teach. That you can go into film and TV, they want everyone to stay in traditional carpentry, because there's also a challenge there in getting enough carpenters generally. So you just have to balance it with the need of other sectors, I think.
I guess it's also something about where you advertise, right? So if you're looking for a set builder on a production and you need somebody that's got carpentry skills, presumably you're not just promoting to the creative sectors. You would then be putting an advert where construction. I mean, that's a kind of really good question, I think,
Really
where you promote and market the roles that you're looking for.
And a really good example of that is because it's a self-employed industry, right? So we don't really, that's one of the big challenges, you don't advertise lots of roles. But one of the things we successfully did at Screen Berkshire is got a local electrical supplier called Copper Connections, who does electrical wiring. Never worked in film and TV. We got them onto a major production to do the electrical. And we did that by just talking to them, doing a one-to-one with them and saying, big productions are coming in, there's a lack of electricians, you need to think about this sector. So actually it could be a business function. Part of our film office, our film commission, is actually talking to businesses about how they can diversify their supply to other sectors. So that also then raises awareness amongst electricians that you can go into film and TV. So yeah, exactly as you're saying, Claire, it's like, when you're looking for an electrician, most film TV companies will look for a film electrician, a spark. And what we're doing through these projects is saying, let's talk to the electricians that don't work in the sector and say, let's tell you about the sector. So going direct to the businesses in the adjacent field, whether that's accounting or electrical. I think we're out of time. So I think we will say thank you very much.